for you lot. But I wanted to start today with probably the biggest trending news around Chelsea fans everywhere. Not all of them, it has to be said, but a lot of Chelsea fans around the world calling for the sacking, calling into question the idea of Maurizio Pochettino, the ex-Spurs manager, being sacked. Many cannot understand why he hasn't been sacked at this moment in time. 10th in the league. They're not out, but they just got humbled by a 12th placed championship team.
Yeah.
He hasn't been sacked as of yet. There's infighting amongst Chelsea fans over players. There's big question marks being questioned. You've got Simon Jordan. You've got pundits calling the club out, saying it's a manufactured club, a plastic club. That's why there's not really any pressure on the manager. He looks too laid back. What's going wrong at Chelsea? And are you surprised that Poch still has a job?
Oh God, how many hours is this show for what's going wrong at Chelsea?
As many as we want it to
be. Look. It's a tough one, right? It's a tough one. Look, I've got to be consistent. I was just saying on another show that I think half the problem is it going well for Chelsea? I mean, it always feels with Chelsea that they win a couple of games, everything seems like it's just moving in the right direction. And then something like this happens. And it feels like they just go like that and then back down here. And then they'll have a couple of wins and they're back down here. Almost a little bit Man United-like in terms of Ten Hag whenever he's about to face the sack. Look, it's not going well on the grand scheme of things. But listen, the whole should he be sacked thing. Terry, I'm a huge defender of if you sack a manager after 18 games and then you sack another manager 18 games later and then you sack another manager 18 games after that, how does your club ever get into any sort of position of consistency, of authority, of players understanding tactics, going through this really difficult spell to actually come out the other side playing well? I don't know. They sacked Potter. They sacked Tuchel. They sacked They sacked Lampard. You're now going to sack Poch? What does that mean, Terry? That the next manager comes in, he gets what? Let's say they sack him now. I'm just, again, hypotheticals, right? Hypotheticals. They sack Pochettino today, right? And ready for this weekend's game. I don't know who Chelsea are playing this weekend, but this weekend they have got, I don't know, let's just chuck a manager in there. They've got the Flick, right? I'll just chuck him in. They've got Hansi Flick as manager. What are you then going to do? In 18 games' time, if Hansi Flick is doing the same thing that Poch is doing now because they've got 14 injuries, because it's a brand new squad, do you sack him again? You go again in the summer? Like, at what point does it end? I'm not saying he's doing well. I've got no reason to stick up for him. Nothing to do with Spurs. I don't care. Not my club.
You still love him, didn't you?
I never loved him in the first place. I thought the whole, he's magic, you know. Well, if you're magic, get over the line and win a trophy. But look, it's got nothing to do with me from a Spurs perspective. But if you sack him, you're going to keep doing this. You're going to keep doing this. And at what stage do all the players turn around and go, what is going on? We had 6 months of his tactics, then 6 months of his, then 6 months of his, different diets, different training, different medical staff, different management, different ethos, different structure, and rip it all up. We'll start again. Different manager. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know what's right for that club, but they're in a mess. They're in a massive mess, aren't they?
Yeah, look, I think I understand exactly where you're coming from. And I love this comment here from Ashram that just says, sack everyone. And of course, we have these debates on the football terrace because it's a topical talking point. And I understand all the arguments that you put forward. I understand that if you sack him, you can continue down this cycle. And when does it end? I understand Chelsea fans will say, we did this under Roman and it worked. I also get the counter to that, which is we don't have the core squad structure. We don't have the quality of team. The world of football has also changed in that time period. So it doesn't work now in this context and in this scenario. Yeah. I think that is a solid, grounded, understandable argument. The problem that I have with Poch is, I just want to show you a quote that came out from Nazir Kinsella. And he says here that Michael Carrick knew Levi Cole would play at left back, and his game plan was to exploit that. Winger Jones had the beating of the 20-year-old and gave them an outlet they needed to release the pressure. Now, I'm taking nothing away from Michael Carrick. He's a United legend, one of my most favorite football players, ever. And I want nothing more than him to become a success in his managerial and coaching career. But the fact that the vast majority of Chelsea fans, rivals and pundits, have consistently called out Poch for playing Colwell in a position that he's just not that good at doing, and now a championship team in 12th position, by the way, who themselves have 14 players out injured at that level, if they know that is how we expose them, and I understand that in its isolation isn't enough to sack Poch. And there was a comment made by Simon Jordan, where he said Poch looks so laid back. There's Bobby Vincent here, a very, very credible Chelsea journalist, has said that Chelsea are continuing to back Pochettino. There does not seem to be any immediate pressure. I actually think that's almost an issue here. There's either not enough pressure and he's far too laid back, or the manager is feeling so under pressure, which tells you that it is coming from the hierarchy, that he's not thinking long term. And we had Ben Jacobs on the show earlier today, and he said the problem with Poch is thinking about the here and now. He's trying to win here and now so he doesn't lose his job, as opposed to planning,
as opposed to building something.
And the irony, just sort of reflecting on everything that's been said in the last 24 hours, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I get the arguments for sacking him, I get the arguments for getting rid of him, but the people saying keep him, the only people that are saying keep him, they're the only ones where it's now starting to be contradicted. If the manager's making short-term decision-making to try and save his job, but you want to keep him for long-term building, that's where it becomes a contradiction. That's where it's a case of, what's the leadership at board level saying, hang on a minute, stop making short-term decisions, Poch, to try and win now. We're not going to sack you. We're going to back you. Get this team playing cohesive, free-flowing, good quality football, and we'll keep buying players and adding it to it. You can't build for the long term if the manager is making short-term decisions. That, for me, is exactly what Man United have done wrong. The manager's trying to win in the here and now, but the board are talking about the future. We're buying players for one manager, but we're playing a completely different style because the manager doesn't want to go through the growing pains of that style. He's going to try and win in the here and now. And you create this sort of this cocktail, this mess, this horrible situation. And the irony is not irony, it's not the word, that the bells that are ringing for me and the red flags are the way the fans are behaving is identical to how Man United fans behave. I saw this tweet today and it said proper Chelsea coming for Enzo and Caicedo, and they should criticize Enzo and Caicedo. £250 million midfield, not been good enough. This guy Risto then says, same guys who will chant Gallagher's name for winning a corner, guess Enzo and Caicedo don't meet the criteria for support. This is the same type of internal civil war that Man United had. And I just think that something's got to give here, and it may end up having to be this manager,
Yeah, okay, and then go through it all again. And this is the problem. We are in a day and age when no one wants to let anybody build. Right now, listen. As I said, I can't say this enough, Terry. I don't care. I don't support Chelsea. I don't care. Sack him, keep him. I don't care. Right? I'm just going to try and play devil's advocate. One, we don't know what's been said to Pochettino for him to look so relaxed. Right? It could be the board saying, stop worrying. Don't worry about the outside noise. Don't worry about the media. Don't worry about it. You're our manager. We're going to stick with you. We know this is going to take time. We know this is a long-term project. We know we messed up with Potter, right? We sacked Tuchel quickly. We sacked Potter quickly. And we're just in this endless cycle of sacking people and then expecting better results. Problem is, Terry, I've talked to you about this a number of times before. The problem is all of the top clubs, right, to get where they've got to, the best two clubs in the Premier League in the last 7 or 8 years have been Liverpool and Man City. Right, by far. Both of them have had their managers for 7 or 8 years, 9 years, where they run the club. All the players are theirs. The training, everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone knows their diet, the ethos, the structure. Everyone knows who's boss. They've had time to implement it. Neither of those two managers went in year one and did anything. Right, this is the problem. Neither of those two managers went in and did anything. Pep Guardiola, year one, everyone going, his football don't suit this league. Remember that? His football don't suit this league. Go back to La Liga. Go back to Bundesliga. Yeah, 1 year, boom. Right? Liverpool's manager came in. Took a couple of years to get rid of all the deadwood he didn't want, to get them playing the way he wants them playing, sprinkled a bit of stardust, they won. The problem is, Chelsea, sure, sack him. What do you do, Terry? What do? You sack him. You bring in a manager now that goes, right, everybody, day one of training. Right, okay, forget everything you've just done the last 6 months. We're now going to do this. But those players... Hang on, Terry, hang on. Right?
There's a challenge there.
Yeah, but when does it stop?
But it stops there. But
it does it because they do the same thing with the next manager.
But this is the thing, and this is what the fans have got to focus on. Stop thinking about managers after this. It has to be that something changes. And I'll give you an example. You could fix... this is what I would do to Poch right now. I'd be like, why are you making these short-term decisions? I'm worried about my job. Don't be worried about your job. You've got a 2-year contract with a further year to extend. We need you to start... Because he ain't the guy who's in charge of the project. Pep isn't in charge of the project at Man City. Klopp isn't in charge of the project at Liverpool. Ange isn't in charge of the project at your club. That's the board. That's the sporting director. That is their job. They are the sporting directors on the board are the modern day football manager. What our guys that we now call managers are head coaches. They run the team. If I'm Todd Bowley in Clear Lake, I'm turning around to him and saying, you are making short-term decisions on the pitch, which are not going to help us build for our future, because we've got to rebuild this foundation. Now, if Poch decides to not listen to his bosses and goes, I'm still going to play Colwell here, I'm going to keep rotating players that are in good... Because weird things, Broja played really well in the FA Cup. Gets a goal, starts to look a bit loose, then he sat on the bench again. You've got to go in there. So I understand, and a lot of Man United fans say this about, well, if we just sack Ten Hag, we're just going to continue on this cycle. No, we won't if the people running the club make the changes. Sacking the manager, I get, is part of that issue, but there's a wider and a deeper concern here. And I don't think on paper sacking Poch is the answer that will fix Chelsea. He may be a symptom towards their problems, but if they let the next manager come in, set him a game plan, and he does a completely different one, then again, they haven't actually fixed the root cause problem. The root cause problem at Chelsea, in my opinion, is Poch isn't doing what the board and the footballing directors have set as their plan.
But you don't know that. But you don't know that. That is again, that's a theory, right?
It's an opinion, the same as everybody.
Sure.
None of us actually, as fans, know exactly what's going on internally, why things ain't working, why Colwell's being played at left back, why Broja was dropped. We have an opinion, we have a theory on what's going on. And for me, looking at it, all I'm looking at is the red flags and the fact that the football is getting worse. They actually started the season playing nice football. Just weren't scoring. Now the football's getting worse. They're becoming predictable. The way I see the fans fighting, the kind of PR messages when the manager's under pressure, all of it is echoes of my club that I've seen for a decade. It almost feels identical to me. So maybe there's a little bit of projection here. Maybe there's a little bit of PTSD from my own experiences. But this just looks like a club where you've potentially got a recruitment team, a board, and now a manager who are not all pulling in the same direction.
I agree with that.
That for me is what needs to be addressed here more than anything else. And that doesn't mean back Poch, not back Poch. That's a case of he even needs to toe the party line and operate in a way that's conducive for development or not. And I know it's a results-driven business, and you've still got to get results even during a rebuild period. But there just seems to be something amiss right now at Chelsea.
So let me ask you a question then. Okay, listen. By the way, as I said, I don't care. Sack him. I don't care. This is your club, right? Not you. This is Chelsea fans' club, right? Potter, this guy's crap. Get rid of him. Tuchel at the time. This guy's finished. Get rid of him. Finished. Everyone's finished. Everyone wants everyone got rid of. All right, cool. So you bring in the next manager, right? If the next manager for the next 18 games, Terry, does exactly what Poch has done, you know what these Chelsea fans are going to do then? They're going to call for him to be sacked as well, right? Do you sack managers every half a year? If you do, that tells me everything you need to know, right?
I do get that. Can I ask you a question though on that?
Yeah, sure.
Can you name me more than, say, 2 managers who have started off their life at a top 6 club with the money he's had to spend, that have started off as badly as him, who have then gone on to be a success?
Mate, listen, I agree. I agree with you. Mate, listen, I completely agree with you. As I said, sack him. I don't care. I'm not going to die on this hill for Pochettino. But if you do, keep the energy for the next manager, because they've done it with Potter, they've done it with Tuchel, they've done it with Lampard.
I think
if you keep doing it.
Again, I think if the next manager comes in, let's say the next manager comes in at the start of the season, so it's an easier process to assess. And come January, they've just been beat by a championship team in a semi-final of the League Cup game. They're 10th in the league. They're struggling to score goals. Players are being played out of position. I think they will. But if Poch's football was continuously getting better, they were starting to win more games. There was some real cohesion. They were excited. They felt like they were really moving forward. Even with some of these poor defeats, I think they'd be backing him. The problem that you have is the style of football and how sustainable it is key. And I think in the first few months of the season, what I heard from Chelsea fans was, it's not clicking, but I'm really excited about this. We can see good patterns, good movement. The ball's moving quicker. The football was nice, and it was. I would say in the last 8 weeks, that seems to have absolutely simmered away. And maybe
I don't agree. I don't agree with that. Some of the games I've watched them. Okay. Well, some of the games I've watched. Listen, not every game. Not every game. Some of the games I watched them, they look god awful. Other games I watch them and I think, if only you had a striker. Look, at the end of the day, sack him. Cool. You know what? I think half the problem is, Terry, is Chelsea are the most decorated football club, right? Right. These are the most decorated football club for the last 20 years, factually, right? In the Premier League. They've won more than anyone else in the last 20 years. Don't know if you knew that. Trophies, right? Yes, they have. Right?
Yes,
hang on.
Yes, but okay.
Hang on.
In the last 30, okay, go on then.
You don't know my point yet. You don't know my point. My point is, right, for the last 20 years, they're the most decorated football club. And what worked for them was they had a brilliant squad for most of that time, where managers could come in, top managers would come in, have 18 months, 2 years, win something, bugger off. A new top manager would come in with a top squad, sprinkle a couple of more top players on top of that, when Chelsea were one of the only teams with money, right? Chelsea were one of the only teams at that time that could go out and go, we'll have him, boom, right? Unfortunately, this Chelsea team isn't that. This isn't a squad where you could just go, right, let's drop this manager and win. This squad isn't that. Whether Chelsea fans want to believe that or not, none of us look at this squad and go, you've got to be winning the league. They're not good enough for that. Right? Now, are they better than 10th place? Yeah, they should be. Absolutely. I'm not doubting it. You could also argue they're 3 points off European football and 1 game away from a League Cup final. So there are, listen, football's like that, right? Fine lines. Yep. Fine lines in football. Chelsea win the next 2 games, they could be 6th. Right? That's the difference in football. I'm not saying sack him. I don't care.
No,
sack him. I'd like to see the circus continue.
And I do get the argument that in that 20-year period of Roman coming in until he left, they're the most successful team in that time period. But you add an extra 5 years to that and say last 25 years, Man United go to the top. You change it and say the last 10 years, and they're nowhere near the top. The fact is, they haven't challenged for a league title in 7 years. I'm not disagreeing with you on large parts that they need to build a structure. I've been talking to Chelsea fans about this for the last 4 years. They need to build a sustainable structure. But you need a manager in that's doing it. And just listening, I mean, I spoke privately and publicly to a couple of journalists in the last few days who say that the manager is making really short-term decisions to try and extend his time at Chelsea, as opposed to helping the club build for the future, because that's their plan. And since hearing that, my mind has started to change. And I think that is what needs to be focused on. Now, I want to go to a couple of comments.